Many faces are known to me, but still I have one slide about my background, because I spent actually 38 years with ABB, and starting in 1971. And I came to Ludvika then as I had been graduated in Chalmers in electronics. And my first job was to digitalize control equipment. This is something people are doing today, but we started here in 1971. So I then grew in the various management positions, and in 1988 I became global manager for the HVDC operations. At that time, within ASEA, or within ABB actually, it was the global managers were positioned out in the regions, not concentrated in Zurich, which happened later. And then also in a later period, I have responsibility for something that was called power systems. And power systems was a quite interesting business area, because we had HVDC, we have high voltage cables, we have high voltage capacitors. So we had both products and systems. And I think it was particularly important that we had the cables in the same business group. Then in 2001 I moved to Zurich, and that was at the time when they concentrated all the business area managers to Zurich, and I became then responsible for strategic development. And in 2009 I left ABB to retire, but I have not retired. I have done other things afterward, but I will not come to that here. So. First thing when I came to Ludvika, I heard about a person called Uno Lamm. He's a person, I never met him, which is interesting. I never met him, but still, I mean, the legacy of Uno Lamm was, I mean, very, very founded in the operations here in Ludvika. And I have actually written a little book about Uno Lamm later. So I studied him. And one of the things that he was known for was that he had the ability to look in the future, to understand where we are heading, in technology, but also in other things. He focused on the usefulness, and I think he was a pioneer also to actually try to understand what was needed out in the market. And he also gathered a team, which was not a team of Ludvika people. He recruited globally, actually, already at that time. Best people he could find to develop the technology and embracing new technology. And last but not least, which I will talk a little about, he was looking for strategic cooperations. And strategic cooperations could be actually with customers, it could be with sub-suppliers. And in fact also he created a competitor to himself to grow the market, which was a remarkable, I would say, insight from a person of his caliber. So one of the things, if you try to characterize the leadership that Uno Lamm represented, he was driven by a vision, and the vision was that he should develop transmission technology with DC. And one of the first things I heard when I came to Ludvika was that the world can live without HVDC, but it can be better with DC. And I think that's quite important, because then you realize that you have to actually fight for creating the market. You have to fight for making people understand how great this technology is. He was also an entrepreneur, that word was not used at the time. Today we talk about entrepreneurs. He was really one. And he created also a culture where we said that he protected the development team. He protected them so well that they actually spent over 20 years in R&D work with no projects, 0 projects, and managed to convince management over and over, this is a great idea, and there will come a time when we can actually reap the benefits of what we are doing. And also he encouraged initiative. It was not enough to be passive, you have to do it. And then also, the first project was the famous cable to Gotland. And then he also, something else that was nothing was perfect, and nothing will ever be perfect. but I think the culture isn't good enough. That's quite something that I've learned very, very recently. I've spent a lot of time recently in Japan. And you might have seen that Japan tends to fall behind now in a lot of technology areas. When they look at television, look at electric cars, look at that other countries are beating Japan today. And Japan has realized this is a problem for Japan. And the problem is they don't accept good enough. It should be perfect. And I have later also in life, I can comment that I had the pleasure to have a lunch a year ago with a chairman of the board of Hitachi Group. And he commented this point specifically. He said that's one of the things we like about the Swedish operation. They understand what they have done. It's good enough to move on. Because otherwise you lose too much time. Then also the ecosystem that he built, I mean he had Uno Lamm, he had cooperation with English Electric, with General Electric, and also he encouraged a competitor into the market because it was difficult to sell this technology if only one was able to supply it. And also had a very value-driven leadership, and if you study also, he was an extremely active and anti-Nazi. And he hired actually from Germany, Dr. Ullmann, so a lot of you must have, if Uno Lamm was the father of HVDC, Uno Lamm was the brain. Because all the theoretical work for HVDC was actually done by Uno Lamm, not by Ullmann, not by Uno Lamm. And also, as I said, he embraced and encouraged people, wherever they came from, to join this research group here. Then also, this is something I was quite interesting. Have you started using AI? That's fantastic, because I asked AI, can you explain to me why the HVDC operation in Ludvika has been so successful? Has it something to do with the organization? And this picture came out. Isn't it beautiful? Because somehow there is an AI brain that has understood the beauty, because this HVDC has always been a project-driven organization. You concentrate on a project, and the project is defined by, it's a well-defined task, it's a timeline, and it's a start and the end of a project. And that makes it so focused, and you bring together the team you need. And then, of course, to make this efficient, you have to encourage people to communicate. And that means you have to break the lines of command. But I can say here already, since I will touch about leadership, what is extremely important, that the guys, whoever they are in the top of the pyramid, they have to accept the fact that people can make decisions without going up and down. And they also have to accept that people sometimes make mistakes. But then the name of the game is not to punish people for mistakes, but rather keep this spirit going on. But I think I can promise you that you will have, I will support you anytime you have a great idea. And then Gunnar created this iconic picture from 1992. Where Gunnar said, okay, I can see we will have a 100% renewable system in Europe, and we will connect everything with DC cables or with cables, and we will have hydrogen storage. That was his idea at the time. This picture, I can say, was when I presented this to the top manager, they said, you're absolutely forbidden to show it outside the company, because no one they will think we have become crazy. So we will not be trusted. So this had secret stamp for a few years, I think until 1994. We could not use it. And you have to realize that at that time when Gunnar made that statement, the PV modules cost $12 per watt. Today they cost 0.1. Wind cost was $2,000 per watt, and now it's about half. Batteries also, which I have been working quite a lot at that time, were about 9,000, and today they are at about 78. And why was Gunnar so convinced that prices would come down? Well, said Gunnar, there are two ways to bring down cost. One is economy of size. And economy of size means if you build a wind turbine, if you build a bigger wind turbine, the price per kilowatt will go down. There is another way to do it, and that is by volume. If you make many. That's, for instance, PV cells. The more PV cells you make, the lower the cost is. And that's a fact, said Gunnar. And then I said to Gunnar, but how low can the price become? What is the rock bottom price? How much calculation do you need to do? And Gunnar said, yeah, you don't need to calculate at all. It's so basic, it's so simple. It's 1.5 times material cost. That's it. You wouldn't believe how many times I've used this formula. When people come to me and say, we have a fantastic idea, and I can bring down, and we'll be so cheap. The first, can I see the bill of materials? I said, okay, you're wrong, because you cannot even pay for the material. So, just by looking at this, already at that time, Gunnar realized how cheap PV cell, photovoltaic cells will become. Because if you look at the bill of material at that time, the cost of a PV cell was about almost 1,000 times material cost, which of course is horrendous. So today, if you mature a product, how can you come lower in cost? Well, it is only one way to do it: less material or cheaper materials. Today I'm working a lot with batteries, and batteries have dropped dramatically in price. Today batteries are down to 1.5 material cost, which means if you want to push it down more, you have to change materials. And if some of you might have read about sodium batteries. Why do you go to sodium batteries? Cheaper material. So this is one example of, I would say, of almost a tradition of engineering here. Very pragmatic, very practical. But of course, sometimes you needed to do a lot of calculations as well. As a result of this vision from Gunnar, we made a strategic work in 1994, where we said, okay, we believe that the market today, which is predominantly is overhead lines, and then of course you can increase the power capacity with reactive power compensation or with DC. You can use less line, but eventually you will have to go underground. And that was our objective at that time. The environmental pressure will actually reduce the possibilities to build overhead, and technology will help the underground or the subsea cables to become more competitive. But and that was so to say the trigger for developing a new generation of technology. But then we also said we have to split it up. One new technology with voltage source converters, which we called HVDC Light. We had actually a name competition there. I was the one-man jury and decided HVDC Light. Because at that time we thought that if we were going to build small ones, we talked about, was it like 30-50 megawatt or something? And many small ones. We got 40 million SEK, which was quite a lot of money. And then we decided to convert the first power line, which was from Ludvika to Grängesberg, to DC. That was a little marketing trick. It was quite clever, I think. So we transformed this into DC. And of course, it was a very small project, but what we showed that we could actually series connect IGBTs, which was a new generation of semiconductors. And I can tell you this, just to make it possible to series connect, a lot of people didn't believe us. I remember there came a delegation from ABB in Finland, because they had made a calculation to show that it was impossible, theoretically impossible. But we managed to do it. But also, this project was unique in another sense, for we did not develop a new valve, we developed a complete new system. And the new system had of course new valves, but it had also new semiconductors. It had a completely new control system with much higher performance in the past, and new cables. And I remember also when because one of the difference between the classic technology and the new technology is, for classic technology, when you test the cable, you have to go from full voltage plus to full voltage minus. With the VSC technology, you only have to go from plus to 0 or minus to 0. So the stress was half. So it made it possible actually to make extruded cables. And we had an extremely intensive group of research group together. We were at that time the biggest customer of corporate research in Västerås also. And I will not go through all the detail, but I think it's interesting that a lot of the theories that was behind Uno Lamm that he developed, you can also find in Gunnar. One thing was of course the visionary thing, but I would also like to point out here the market creation, because Uno Lamm created a market, and also the HVDC light also, they opened up a new markets actually. And that was one of the key things that we managed to do. So this new technology that we said, we are going to open up new markets. One was connection of remote loads, one was connection of wind power, one was connection of offshore platforms, one was underground subsea, and then it was power quality. We had actually one more, that was city infeed. I just saw that Hitachi commissioned this week, I think, or last week, a big city infeed in India. I think it's the first city infeed sold ever. Yes. So it took some time. But what we did there, we said, okay, if you want to build it, we have technology to do it, because people said it cannot be done. But we said, of course it can be done, but you can use DC for this. And that resulted in that, in the time frame between 2005 and 2010, a number of projects were built actually offshore. And we started, that business was also, people that knows about it, it was very tough. The company lost a lot of money on some of the projects. But at that time also, I think management was convinced that this was probably a good solution anyway. So we were allowed to continue. In 2000, so far, ABB was the only supplier in the world of this technology. In 2007, and I remember this very well, because in 2007, around in the spring of 2007, internet was quite new thing at that time. I'm an early adopter. I was surfing on the internet, and all of a sudden I found a presentation that Siemens has made in India, where they presented something called HVDC Plus. And in this presentation they showed that, well, they are going to use VSC technology, and said, this is what people normally are doing, and this is what ABB was doing. We have a better idea, which is called multi-level. And they presented this in detail, and they said, we will become leaders in the VSC-based technology because we have a better technology. I gave this presentation to Gunnar Asplund just before holidays. That was Ludvika gave. Said, take a look at this, Gunnar, because it doesn't look good for us. So Gunnar, I heard from his wife later, he spent the whole vacation on looking at this, calculating. Gunnar was calculating, really calculating. So when I met him after the vacation, Gunnar said, look, I looked through this, and it's clear they have a better technology than we, number one. Number two, they have miscalculated the losses because they are even lower than they said. And they are much lower than what we have. Let's say, don't you have any good news? Good news is I know how we can copy what they've done without infringing the patents. Again, lessons learned here is that, and so in October, when Siemens launched, we had already started designing the new technology, the copycat with multi-level. So this is, and they also got a contract, by the way, first contract Siemens. So in just a few years later, actually, this is a Hitachi shot. We started developing generation 4, and in 2010 we got a contract for the first generation 4. Then we had, so to say, caught up with Siemens. And what I'm talking about this is that because normally engineers are very proud, they don't admit that someone is better. I think the beauty of these people, they could see this is smart, it's better. So we have to step up and we have to do it. And that's why ABB could recover the leadership. You can also see on this chart that the losses went down dramatically. With the high losses we had in our design at that time, I think Siemens would have beaten us every time in the future. But we came back on track. This is a slide that shows what is said, the 6 key technologies for development. This is a brand new slide. 6 new technologies that will, so to say, build the new energy system. And it's to generate electricity is PV and wind. To transport and store is batteries and HVDC lines. Today I work a lot with batteries. And then on the use, it's heat pumps and EVs. So these are the 6 key technologies. And HVDC is one of them, which I think is remarkable. And it shows that people, I would say, that betting on the technology were in a way right. So then this was interesting, this HVDC light project, if I call it, is actually, there is a doctoral thesis made on this project. But a guy has written a thick book about this, and he has also summarized why the project was successful, which I didn't know, but I have to check. He told me. So he said, number one, he said, well, the company created a safe haven for the development team. The R&D team was, so to say, protected and were given resources. That was one of the key factors. Another thing that is, I didn't think about it so much, that of course there was an internal potential conflict between people working with the traditional technology and the new. Because we have to realize that in the beginning, the new technology guys, they had all the fun. The guys working with the traditional, they had to make the things work, and also bring money into the company. Because the traditional technology paid the development of the new. But then I think it was one way to do that. One way to do that is that we had every week we had a meeting. You remember Björn? We had this HVDC light meetings to keep people informed. So people should be, even those people that were not working with the new project, were still felt as a part of it. Then also, this is key. I mean, to lead with questions and not answers. And this is something that goes across if you go any leadership course, remember this. Don't tell people the answers, but you can have leading questions. That's, by the way, this is something women are very good at. My wife can tell me, don't you think you should? I know what it means. And then also, there will always be crisis, and then you have to protect, so to say, the organization from the crisis, and also to find ways out of it. And because normally a crisis there are 2 reactions. One is the normal one is a blame game that starts. The other one is more constructive, is actually to try to, instead of finding the blame, find a way out of it. And then I can see, during my years up in Ludvika, I always felt that I was protected by upper management, any time. And I try to act in the same way myself. Then to wrap up this, because it's this story about development, I think, can have some interesting aspect, but remember also it was close to be dead, killed in a few times. It survived. Today we know all that answer, we are where we are. And then if you sum up in leadership principle, this is I would say a classical roadmap, how you can create trust-based leadership. One first point is actually autonomy. If you give people responsibility, you must allow them to act. Transparency, that is, you have to be transparent with the information, good and bad. No punishment for dissent, I mentioned that already. Co-creation is also. And remember, this is a generic slide, and this is, I think, what has always been done here, co-creation. Long-time view, holistic view, and this comes with the vision. Failure means that you have new inputs instead of having made a mistake. I actually found recently, because normally I have on very, very few occasions been writing down speeches. I don't believe in writing down, but I found I've done it once. And that was in 1994, actually when they had the annual meeting for rewarding veterans in the company. I made a speech, and that is written down. And of course, instead of having the speech for you, I asked AI, can you summarize the speech in one slide? And it came out this one. So, and it called the Ludvika model, a guide to trust-based leadership. And this is what I said then. First of all, I mean, this is obvious. The company is the people, and it's like a buzzword, but you have to act like that's a fact. Encourage generosity. And one of the things I remember very early when we had the Itapu project, engineers came from Brazil to work here in Ludvika. And then when they got stuck on something, they said, you can go and ask that one, ask her, you will, and said, it's a problem, because I get the answers. Wherever I come, I get the answers. I said, isn't that the way you do? No, I said, in Brazil, knowledge is my asset. So remember that. And then also handle uncertainty with flexibility. The first lesson I had on this was when I actually came to work here in Ludvika. When I was hired to work on the Gotland project. Then 3 months later I came to and knocked on the door and stepped in here, and my boss said, oh, hello, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to start working here. Oh, haven't they told us about there will be no Gotland project? But then they said, so very quickly they said, okay, so I was there, I was going to design control system for a project that was cancelled. So then I was transferred immediately into another task to develop thyristor coolers, which was quite interesting. But it learned also that you have to be able to adapt, because things don't always go as you plan. Solutions before blame, I mentioned already, and openness. What I learned here is, of course, that a lot of the people that you see working in this organization, they are for sure not born in Ludvika. They come from somewhere else. And they come from many countries, and also the openness, and also, I would say, a quite high number of people that are living and working have spent considerable time abroad. Either on contract, but also been spending. And I think this creates an openness that is almost unique, that you embrace people. And then also leadership that reflects the organization. You cannot have an entrepreneur in organization run by a controller. It doesn't work. And the other way around, by the way, also. The controlling department cannot be represented by an entrepreneur or a risk taker. So that's why sometimes it is critical when they appoint managers to run organizations, they don't see this, how important this is. That the manager must in some way represent the organization. And then investing. I mean, how do you prove to the organization that you trust them. And of course, it's investing in people and investing in new technology, investing in new ideas. So the moment you stop investing, of course, it's very difficult to keep up the spirit. And that's why I was quite happy also when I met this chairman of Hitachi Group. And I've seen, I mean, the enormous investments that are done. And I said to him also, but why did you acquire this Hitachi or these ABB assets in Sweden? Well, I said, because when I became the CEO, before he was CEO of Hitachi Group. When I became CEO, Hitachi Group had 90% Japanese employees, 90%. We had not one single manager that was non-Japanese across the world. Then today we have about 70% that are Japanese. My target is 50. And what we're especially watching for when we acquire companies, we want to buy innovation. And what I found in this HVDC operations, so we found innovation and growth. And that's what we have bought. We have bought innovation. I said, then you bought it for good reasons, said. Congratulations. So with that I will finish and I can have some questions. So like, why did you do that or whatever? So thank you for listening.